My daughter-in-law cut my car's brake lines and waved goodbye. The truck driver watched me crash and flip. 6 times, what happened will shock you. The story you are about to listen to changed everything I thought I knew about family, love, and survival. If you're listening from anywhere in the world, please like, share, subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. The taste of blood was the first thing I remember. Then the smell of gasoline. Then the sound of my own breathing, ragged and desperate, echoing inside what used to be my car. I was hanging upside down, my seatbelt cut into my chest like a knife. Glass covered everything. The steering wheel was somewhere near my feet. Outside, I could hear voices getting closer, footsteps on gravel, someone shouting about calling 911, 6 times. That's how many times my car flipped before it stopped moving. No, because the truck driver told me later. He was the one who saw everything. He was the one who pulled me out. And he was the one who told me something that made my blood run colder than the October wind rushing through my shattered windshield. "Ma'am," he said while the paramedics worked on my broken ribs, "I saw someone wave as your car went down that hill. Someone was standing in your driveway waving goodbye. It was the strangest thing I've ever seen." That's when the memory hit me, sharp and clear like the glass that had cut my face. Sarah, my daughter-in-law, standing in my driveway, smiling, waving. She knew. The paramedic's voice brought me back to the present. "Mrs. Carter, can you tell me what happened?" What happened? Where do I even start? Do I tell him about the brake pedal that went straight to the floor when I tried to stop at the intersection? Do I tell him about the 30 seconds of pure terror? As I pumped those brakes over and over, watching the stop sign get bigger and bigger through my windshield? Do I tell him about the moment I realized I was going to die, and the only thing I could think about was how Sarah had insisted on taking my car to the shop just yesterday? "I don't know," I whispered instead. "My brakes just stopped working." The truck driver leaned closer. His name was Miguel, and he had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Ma'am, I've been driving trucks for 23 years. I've seen a lot of accidents, but I've never seen someone wave goodbye to a car that was about to crash." My chest tightened. Not from the broken ribs, from something much worse. "What did she look like?" I asked. "Young woman, brown hair. She was wearing a red jacket. She stood there for a long time after your car disappeared over the hill. Just stood there, smiling. Sarah's red jacket. The one I bought her for Christmas last year. The one she wore every time she wanted to look innocent and sweet." The ambulance ride to the hospital was a blur of sirens and medical equipment. But my mind was crystal clear. I kept thinking about yesterday morning. How Sarah had knocked on my door at 7 a.m., coffee in hand, smile bright as sunshine. "Good morning, Helen," she'd said. "I was thinking about what you said yesterday. About your car making that noise. I called Tommy's auto shop. They can squeeze you in today if we hurry." I hadn't said anything about my car making noise. My car was fine. But Sarah had seemed so concerned, so helpful. She'd even offered to drive me there and pick me up. "That's so sweet of you, dear," I'd said. "But I can handle it myself." No, I insist. "You shouldn't be driving if there's something wrong with the brakes." Brakes. She'd said brakes specifically. I remember now because it struck me as odd. I'd never mentioned brakes, but I'd let her take my car anyway. Because that's what you do when family offers to help. You trust them. You let them help you. You don't question their motives. You don't think they're trying to kill you. The hospital room was white and sterile and full of machines that beeped every few seconds. My son Ryan showed up around midnight, still in his work clothes, eyes red, from crying. "Mom." "Oh my God, Mom," he said, grabbing my hand. "I got here as fast as I could. Sarah called me. She said you'd been in an accident." Sarah called him. Of course she did. She was probably the first person the hospital contacted, since she was listed as my emergency contact. The responsible daughter-in-law who'd helped her aging mother-in-law get her car fixed. The caring family member who'd been so worried about those faulty brakes. "How are you feeling?" Ryan asked. "The doctor said you have 3 broken ribs and a concussion, but you're going to be okay. Thank God you're going to be okay." I looked at my son. Really looked at him. When had he gotten so thin? When had those worry lines appeared around his eyes? When had he started looking so much like his father? "Where's Sarah?" I asked. Something flickered across his face. So quick I almost missed it. "She's at home with the kids. She wanted to come, but Emma has that fever, and you know how she gets when she's sick." I did know. Emma was my granddaughter, 7 years old, and she got clingy when she was ill. She wanted her mama and no one else. But something about Ryan's explanation felt rehearsed, like he'd practiced it on the drive over. "She sends her love," he added. "She feels terrible about the accident. She keeps saying she should have insisted on a rental car while yours was being worked on. What did they fix on my car?" "The brakes, just like Sarah thought. Tommy said the brake lines were completely shot. You're lucky you didn't crash sooner." Lucky. That's what everyone kept saying. I was lucky. Lucky the truck driver saw me. Lucky I survived 6 flips. Lucky I was wearing my seatbelt. Lucky the car didn't catch fire. But here's the thing about luck. Sometimes it's not luck at all. Sometimes it's something much more deliberate. The next morning, a nurse named Patricia came in to check my vitals. She was a young black woman with gentle hands and a smile that reminded me of my sister. "You're quite the miracle, Mrs. Carter," she said while checking my blood pressure. "Dr. Williams has been telling everyone about your case. 6 flips and you walked away with broken ribs and a concussion. That's not normal." "The truck driver says someone was waving when I crashed," I said. "He says it was strange." Patricia paused. "Waving?" "From my driveway. A woman in a red jacket." "That is strange," she agreed. "Who would wave at a car that was about to crash?" "Someone who knew it was going to crash. Someone who'd been waiting for it to happen. Someone who wanted to make sure it happened." "Patricia," I said, "can you do me a favor?" "Of course. Can you find out what time my car was brought to Tommy's auto shop yesterday? And what time it was picked up?" She looked confused. "Why?" "Because I don't think my brakes failed by accident." That afternoon, Miguel the truck driver came to visit. He brought flowers and a card signed by his wife and kids. He also brought something else, something that made my heart stop. "I hope you don't mind," he said, "but I recorded everything on my dash cam. It's automatic, records everything while I'm driving. I thought you might want to see it." He handed me his phone. The video was grainy, but clear enough. There was my driveway. There was my house. There was my car pulling out of the garage. And there was Sarah, standing by the mailbox, wearing her red jacket, smiling. But she wasn't just smiling. She was checking her watch, like she was timing something, like she was waiting for something specific to happen. The video showed my car reaching the end of the driveway. Sarah raised her hand. Not a casual wave, a deliberate gesture, like she was saying goodbye forever. Then my car started down the hill. I watched myself try to brake at the intersection. I watched my car skid through the stop sign. I watched it flip once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times before it finally stopped. And in the background, you could still see Sarah, still standing there, still smiling. "I've watched this video about 50 times, Miguel said quietly. "I keep hoping I'll see something different." But she knew, didn't she? She knew what was going to happen. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. I could only stare at the screen, watching my daughter-in-law wave goodbye to what she thought would be my death. "Why would she do this?" I whispered. "I don't know," Miguel said. but I think you need to find out. That night, alone in my hospital bed, I stared at the ceiling and tried to piece together the last few months. Sarah had been different lately. Colder, more distant. She'd stopped bringing the kids over as much. She'd stopped asking for my advice about cooking and parenting. She'd stopped treating me like family, but I'd assumed it was just the normal adjustment period. Sarah and Ryan had been married for 8 years. The honeymoon phase was over. She was busy with work and kids and life. I was getting older and maybe more demanding without realizing it. I never imagined she wanted me dead. The question was why. What could I have possibly done to make her hate me so much that she'd cut my brake lines and watch me drive to my death? I thought about my house. The house I'd signed over to Ryan and Sarah 3 years ago when they needed help with their mortgage. I thought about my life insurance policy, the one that made Ryan the beneficiary after his father died. I thought about my savings account, the one I'd been slowly emptying to help pay for Emma's private school and Tyler's soccer camp. I thought about all the ways I'd been trying to help my family, all the ways I'd been trying to be a good mother and grandmother, and I realized that maybe, to Sarah, I wasn't help at all. Maybe I was just an obstacle, an expensive obstacle that was getting in the way of her plans. Maybe she'd decided it was time to remove that obstacle. The thought made me sick, but it also made me angry. Angrier than I'd been in years, because if Sarah thought she could kill me and get away with it, she was about to learn something about Helen Carter that she'd never bothered to discover. I might be 63 years old. I might have broken ribs and a concussion. I might be lying in a hospital bed with machines beeping around me. But I was far from finished, and I was definitely not going to let my daughter-in-law get away with attempted murder. The game was just beginning. And this time, I was going to play to win. But first, I needed to understand how I'd gotten here. How a woman I'd welcomed into my family like my own daughter had decided I needed to die. The answer lay in the months before the crash, in the slow erosion of everything I thought I knew about the people I loved most. It started about a year ago, maybe longer. I can't pinpoint the exact moment when Sarah began to change. It was subtle at first. Little things that I brushed off as stress or fatigue or just the natural evolution of our relationship. I remember the day I first noticed it clearly. I was babysitting Emma and Tyler while Sarah and Ryan went to a work dinner. Emma had scraped her knee playing in the backyard, and I'd cleaned it up and put a bandage on it. When Sarah came home, she looked at the bandage and frowned. "What happened to her knee?" she asked. "Just a little scrape," I said. "Nothing serious." She was brave about it. Sarah knelt down and peeled back the bandage. "This looks infected," she said, though it clearly wasn't. "I should take her to urgent care." "Sarah, it's just a scrape." I cleaned it thoroughly. I used antibiotic ointment. I've been taking care of cuts and scrapes for 40 years. "Things are different now," she said. "There are new protocols. New concerns about infection." Ryan appeared behind her. "Mom, maybe Sarah's right. Better safe than sorry." Better safe than sorry. That phrase became Sarah's favorite weapon over the following months. Every decision I made, every piece of advice I offered, every way I tried to help was suddenly dangerous, risky, something that required a second opinion. When I suggested we take the kids to the park, Sarah worried about strangers. When I offered to drive Emma to dance class, Sarah worried about my reflexes. When I made Tyler his favorite cookies, Sarah worried about food allergies he'd never had. "I'm not trying to be difficult," she'd say with that sweet smile that never quite reached her eyes. "I just want what's best for the children." And Ryan would nod along like a puppet on strings. My son, who I'd raised to think for himself, who I'd taught to question everything, was suddenly accepting Sarah's version of reality without question. The worst part was how they made me feel like I was losing my mind, like I was the problem, like I was some confused old woman who couldn't be trusted with basic tasks. "Mom, you forgot to lock the door when you left yesterday," Ryan would say, but I hadn't forgotten. I never forgot to lock doors. I'd been locking doors for 60 years. "Helen, you left the stove on when you came over to help with dinner," Sarah would mention casually. But I hadn't left the stove on. I always checked appliances twice. It was a habit from my nursing days. "You seem confused lately," Sarah would say with fake concern. "Maybe you should talk to your doctor about memory issues." Memory issues. At 63. When I could still remember every patient I'd ever treated, every medication I'd ever administered, every birthday and anniversary and important date in my family's life. But the seed was planted, and slowly, carefully, Sarah began to water it. She started keeping a notebook. "Just to help you remember things," she'd say. "Doctor's appointments, medications, important dates." But the notebook became a record of my supposed failures. Every time I forgot to call before coming over. Every time I mixed up Emma's soccer schedule with Tyler's baseball practice. Every tiny, normal human mistake was documented like evidence. Ryan started mentioning the notebook in conversations. "Sarah's been keeping track of some things," he'd say. "Maybe we should think about getting you some help, a companion or something." A companion? Like I was an invalid who couldn't be trusted to live alone. The house was the next battleground. The house where I'd raised Ryan. The house where his father and I had built our life together. The house I'd worked 3 jobs to pay for after his father died. 3 years ago, Sarah and Ryan had financial troubles. Ryan's construction business was struggling. Sarah's part-time job at the dental office wasn't covering their expenses. They were facing foreclosure. I didn't hesitate. I signed the house over to them, not sold it to them, gave it to them, free and clear, so they could use the equity to save their own home. "It's just temporary," Ryan had said, "until we get back on our feet. Then we'll transfer it back." But temporary stretched into months. Months stretched into years. And somehow, in Sarah's version of the story, I'd become a burden rather than a benefactor. "She's living in our house rent-free," I heard her tell someone on the phone one day. "We can't afford to support her forever." Our house. Our house. The house I'd given them was now their burden. I started looking for my own place. Small apartments. Senior communities. Anything that would get me out of their house and away from the constant criticism. But every place I looked at, Sarah found problems with. Too far from family. Too expensive. Not safe enough. Too isolated. The stairs were too steep. The neighborhood was too rough. The maintenance wasn't reliable. "I just want you to be comfortable," she'd say. "And safe. We worry about you being alone." So I stayed. In the house that used to be mine, walking on eggshells, trying not to be a burden. Trying to be the perfect, grateful houseguest in my own home. The money came next. My savings account that I'd built up over 30 years of working as a nurse. The account I'd been so proud of. The account that represented my independence and security. Sarah began asking about my finances. "Just to make sure you're prepared for emergencies," she'd say. "Healthcare costs are so expensive now." She convinced me to add her name to the account. "Just in case something happens to you," she explained. "So we can pay your bills and take care of things." Ryan thought it was a good idea. "Mom, you need someone to help manage your money. Math was never your strong suit." Math was never my strong suit. My son, who I'd helped with homework every night, until he graduated high school, was telling me I couldn't handle basic arithmetic. But I added her name to the account, because that's what responsible people do. They plan for emergencies. They make sure their family can access their funds if needed. Within 6 months, Sarah was making suggestions about my spending. "Do you really need cable TV? You're hardly ever home. Do you really need that expensive phone plan? You barely use it. Do you really need to go out to eat so often? It's not good for your health anyway. Every expense I made was scrutinized. Every purchase was questioned. Every dollar I spent was somehow wasteful or unnecessary. Meanwhile, Emma needed new school clothes. Tyler needed equipment for baseball. The house needed repairs. The car needed maintenance. And somehow, my savings account was always the solution. "Just a loan," Sarah would say. "We'll pay you back as soon as Ryan's next job comes through." But the jobs never came through. Or they did. But there was always another emergency, another expense, another reason why paying me back would have to wait. I watched my life savings disappear a few $100s at a time. And every time I mentioned it, Sarah would get that hurt look in her eyes. "I thought we were family," she'd say. "I thought family helped each other. But if money is more important to you than Emma's education or Tyler's opportunities..." Money wasn't more important than my grandchildren. Of course it wasn't. But it was my money. Money I'd earned. Money I'd saved. Money I might need someday. Money that was disappearing faster than I could keep track of. The isolation was the cruelest part. Sarah began monitoring my phone calls. "Who was that?" she'd ask when I hung up. What did they want? If I spent too long talking to my sister Marie or my friend Beverly, Sarah would find reasons to interrupt. "Helen, can you help me with dinner?" she'd call from the kitchen. "The kids need help with homework." Always something urgent. Always something that couldn't wait. Slowly, my world got smaller. I stopped calling Marie as often because Sarah always seemed to need something when I was on the phone. I stopped going to lunch with Beverly because Sarah worried about me driving alone. I stopped attending my book club because Sarah thought the evening meetings were too risky. "It's just that we worry," Ryan would say. "You're getting older. It's natural for us to be concerned." Getting older. As if turning 63 had somehow made me incompetent overnight. My doctor's appointments became family affairs. Sarah would insist on coming with me. "Just to make sure you remember to ask all the important questions," she'd say. But once we were in the doctor's office, Sarah would dominate the conversation. "She's been having some memory issues," she'd tell Dr. Peterson. "Forgetting things, getting confused. We're concerned about early dementia." And I'd sit there, feeling like a child, while Sarah listed all my supposed symptoms. The forgotten door locks, the imaginary stove incidents, the confusion about appointments. Dr. Peterson would nod and make notes. "These things can be normal parts of aging," he'd say. "But we'll keep an eye on it. Keep an eye on it." Like I was a problem to be monitored rather than a person to be helped. The final straw came 3 months ago. Sarah announced that she'd been researching assisted living facilities. "Just as a precaution," she said. "So we know what options are available when the time comes. When the time comes. Not if. When. I don't need assisted living," I said. "I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself." "Of course you are," Sarah said in that patronizing tone she'd perfected. "But independence is about making smart choices. And smart choices sometimes mean accepting help before you absolutely need it." She showed me brochures, beautiful facilities with gardens and activities and caring staff. "You'd make so many friends," she said. "You'd have people to talk to all day. You wouldn't be lonely anymore." I wasn't lonely. I was isolated. There's a difference. "The one in Springfield has an opening," Sarah continued. "It's only about an hour away. We could visit every weekend." Every weekend. Like I was some relative they'd dutifully visit out of obligation. "I'm not ready for that," I said. "Of course not," Sarah agreed. "But the waiting lists are long. It's smart to get your name on the list now. Get your name on the list. Like signing up for my own imprisonment." That night, I heard Sarah and Ryan talking in the kitchen. I wasn't eavesdropping. I was just getting a glass of water, but their voices carried through the thin walls. "She's never going to agree to it," Ryan was saying. "She's too stubborn." "She'll agree," Sarah replied. She just needs the right motivation. What kind of motivation? She needs to understand that she's not safe living independently. She needs to understand that we can't take care of her forever. There was a pause. Then Ryan asked, "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that sometimes people need help seeing reality. Sometimes they need to experience consequences before they'll accept help." Consequences? What kind of consequences was Sarah talking about? I didn't find out until yesterday, when she took my car to the shop, when she insisted on handling the brake problem that didn't exist, when she stood in the driveway and waved goodbye as I drove toward what she thought would be my death. Now, lying in this hospital bed, I understood the full scope of Sarah's plan. She hadn't just wanted me out of the house. She hadn't just wanted my money. She'd wanted me gone completely, because dead people don't need assisted living. Dead people don't require care or attention or visits. Dead people don't complain about their savings being spent or their independence being eroded. Dead people don't cause problems for ambitious daughters-in-law who want to start fresh without the burden of an aging mother-in-law. Sarah had been planning this for months, maybe years. Every criticism, every documented mistake, every suggestion that I was losing my mind had been building toward this moment. When I died in that car crash, she would have been the concerned daughter-in-law who'd tried so hard to help me, who'd begged me to stop driving, who'd been worried about my memory and my judgment. She was getting so forgetful, she'd tell people, at my funeral. We tried to help her, but she was so stubborn, so independent. We should have insisted she give up her keys, and everyone would nod sympathetically. Poor Sarah, poor Ryan. They'd done everything they could, but sometimes you can't save people from themselves. The perfect crime. Except for one detail Sarah hadn't counted on. I survived, and now I knew exactly what she'd done and why she'd done it. The question was, what was I going to do about it? I had no proof, no evidence, no witnesses except a truck driver who'd seen her wave goodbye. Even Miguel's video just showed her standing in the driveway. It didn't show her cutting brake lines or tampering with my car. Sarah was smart. She'd been careful. She'd spent months building a case that I was incompetent and confused. If I accused her of attempted murder, who would believe me? The forgetful old woman who couldn't remember to lock doors or turn off stoves? But I had one advantage Sarah didn't know about. One thing she'd overlooked in all her careful planning. I wasn't actually forgetful or confused. I'd been gaslit and manipulated, but my mind was sharp. My memory was intact. And my nursing training had taught me to be observant and methodical. Sarah had underestimated me. She'd assumed that because I was older, I was weaker. Because I was trusting, I was stupid. Because I loved my family, I was blind to their flaws. She was about to learn how wrong she'd been. The next morning, Patricia came in with my breakfast and some interesting information. "I called Tommy's auto shop like you asked," she said. "Your car was never brought in yesterday. In fact, they don't have any record of you scheduling service at all." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Are you sure?" "Positive. I spoke to Tommy himself. He said he knows you, but he hasn't worked on your car in over 2 years. He was confused about why someone would say they'd made an appointment for you. So Sarah had lied about the appointment. She'd taken my car somewhere else. Or she'd worked on it herself. There's something else," Patricia continued. "I asked my husband to drive by your house this morning. He's a mechanic. He said there's a puddle of brake fluid in your driveway. Fresh brake fluid. Like someone had been working on a car there recently. My driveway. Sarah had sabotaged my car in my own driveway. While I was sleeping in the house, she'd convinced me to sign over to her." "Patricia," I said, "I need another favor. Anything. I need you to help me find out who benefits from my life insurance policy. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had a family member who made you question your own? Reality? Share your story below. Patricia returned that afternoon with a manila folder and a grim expression. I found the information you requested, she said, closing the door behind her. You're not going to like it. She sat down in the chair beside my bed and opened the folder. Inside were photocopies of insurance documents, bank statements, and forms I'd never seen before. Your life insurance policy was changed 6 months ago, Patricia said quietly. The beneficiary was switched from your son Ryan to your daughter-in-law Sarah. The signature looks like yours, but… She handed me the document. I stared at my supposed signature. It looked like my handwriting, but something was off. The letters were too perfect, too careful. Like someone had practiced writing my name over and over until they got it right. I never signed this, I said. I didn't think you had. But there's more. Patricia pulled out another document. This is a power of attorney form, also dated 6 months ago. It gives Sarah complete control over your financial and medical decisions if you're declared incompetent. The room started spinning. I never signed this either. And this, Patricia continued, is a will, dated 3 months ago. It leaves everything to Sarah and Ryan, with Sarah as the executor. My hand shook as I looked at the signature. Again, it looked like mine but felt wrong, too steady, too confident. Not like someone who was supposedly losing her memory and cognitive abilities. Patricia, how did you get these documents? She looked uncomfortable. I have a friend who works at the insurance company. She's not supposed to share client information, but when I told her what happened to you, she got suspicious. She pulled your file and found all these recent changes. What else did she find? A large claim was filed this morning for accidental death benefits. Sarah filed it about 2 hours after your accident was reported. The blood drained from my face. 2 hours? Most people wait at least a few days before filing insurance claims. They're dealing with grief, making funeral arrangements, notifying family. But Sarah filed immediately, like she was ready for it, like she'd been waiting for it, like she'd been planning for it. There's something else, Patricia said. The policy was increased to $500,000 when the beneficiary was changed. Your previous policy was only for $50,000. $500,000. Sarah had potentially made me worth 10 times more dead than alive. I need to call the police, I said. With what evidence? Forged signatures are hard to prove. And even if they are forged, Sarah could claim she was helping you manage your affairs because of your memory problems. She's been documenting those problems for months. Patricia was right. Sarah had been building her case for a long time. Every notebook, entry, every witnessed mistake, every conversation about my declining abilities had been preparation for this moment. What about the brake lines? I asked. Without the actual car, there's no proof they were cut. The car was totaled in the accident. It's probably already been sent to the scrapyard. I felt trapped. Sarah had thought of everything. She'd covered every angle, planned for every contingency. She'd been playing chess while I was playing checkers. But, Patricia continued, my friend at the insurance company said something interesting. Claims this large trigger automatic investigations. They'll want to interview you, examine the car, review your medical records. If there's evidence of foul play, they'll find it. How long does that take? Weeks, maybe months. And in the meantime, Sarah thinks you're going to die from your injuries. She's been calling the hospital every few hours asking about your condition. What is she being told? That you're stable but critical, that your family should prepare for the worst. I understood. The hospital was protecting me without knowing they were protecting me. Sarah thought I was dying, which meant she felt safe. She wasn't covering her tracks or destroying evidence because she believed her plan had worked. I need to stay dead, I said. What do you mean? I mean I need everyone to think I'm not going to make it. I need Sarah to believe she's won. That way, she'll make mistakes. She'll get careless. Patricia looked uncertain. That's dangerous. If something really does happen to you. Something already happened to me? My daughter-in-law tried to kill me. Now I need to prove it. The next 2 days were the strangest of my life. I was officially listed as critical but stable. The doctors were optimistic about my recovery, but the nurses were instructed to be vague when family members called. Ryan visited once. He sat beside my bed for about 20 minutes, holding my hand and talking about childhood memories. He seemed genuinely upset, genuinely worried. For a moment, I wondered if he was involved in Sarah's plan or if he was just another victim of her manipulation. The kids want to see you, he said. But Sarah thinks it would be too traumatic if something happens. If something happens. Not when I recover. If something happens. She's been so strong through all of this, Ryan continued. Taking care of the kids, handling the insurance stuff, dealing with the police reports. I don't know what I'd do without her. The insurance stuff. Of course she was handling the insurance stuff. She'd probably filed the claim before the ambulance had even arrived at the hospital. She feels terrible about your car, Ryan said. She keeps saying she should have insisted you take it to a different mechanic. She blames herself. She blames herself. The perfect act of guilt and remorse from a caring daughter-in-law who'd tried so hard to help. Mom, I need to ask you something, Ryan said, lowering his voice. The doctors say you might have some memory issues from the concussion. If that happens, Sarah and I want you to know we'll take care of everything. All the legal stuff, the financial stuff. You don't need to worry about any of it. The legal stuff, the financial stuff. Sarah had sent Ryan to make sure I understood that she was in control now, that I didn't need to worry about signing documents or making decisions. That's good, I whispered, playing along. I trust you both. Good. That's good. Sarah will be so relieved. She's been worried you might be confused or scared. Confused or scared. The two emotions that would justify any decision Sarah made on my behalf. After Ryan left, I lay in bed thinking about my son, the boy I'd raised to be kind and honest and strong, the man who'd let his wife isolate me from my friends, steal my money, and ultimately try to kill me. Was he complicit, or was he just another victim of Sarah's manipulation? Had she been gaslighting him too? Making him believe I was losing my mind? Or was he actively participating in her scheme? I didn't know. But I was going to find out. The next morning, Patricia brought me a visitor I wasn't expecting, Detective Maria Santos from the local police department. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a notebook full of questions. Mrs. Carter, I'm investigating your accident, she said. I understand you believe it wasn't accidental. That's right. Can you tell me why you think that? I told her everything. The forged documents, the insurance policy, the fake auto shop appointment, the brake fluid in my driveway. Detective Santos listened without interrupting, taking notes in shorthand. These are serious allegations, she said when I finished. Do you have any evidence to support them? The truck driver saw my daughter-in-law waving when I crashed. He has dash cam footage. I've spoken to Mr. Rodriguez. His video shows a woman in your driveway, but it doesn't prove she tampered with your car. What about the forged signatures? Handwriting analysis takes time. And even if the signatures are forged, your daughter-in-law could claim she was helping you because of your memory problems. What about the brake fluid? By the time we got to your house, any evidence had been washed away by rain. I felt my hope deflating. So there's nothing you can do? I didn't say that. I said we need more evidence. Your daughter-in-law has been very helpful so far. She's provided us with detailed documentation of your recent memory issues. She's cooperated fully with our investigation. Of course she had. Sarah was playing the role of the concerned family member perfectly. But, Detective Santos continued, I've been a cop for 15 years. I've seen a lot of domestic situations, and something about this case feels off. What do you mean? I mean, your daughter-in-law is almost too helpful, too prepared. Most people in her situation would be emotional, disorganized, overwhelmed. But she has answers for everything, documents for everything, explanations for everything. So what happens now? Now we dig deeper. We examine your car more carefully. We interview people who knew you both. We look at phone records, bank records, credit card statements. If your daughter-in-law tried to kill you, she left a trail. We just have to find it. Detective Santos stood to leave, then paused. Mrs. Carter, I need to ask you something. Are you sure you want to pursue this? If you're wrong about your daughter-in-law, this investigation could destroy your family. Detective, if I'm right about my daughter-in-law, she's already destroyed my family. After Detective Santos left, I spent the rest of the day thinking about evidence. What could I prove? What could I document? What mistakes had Sarah made in her confidence that I was going to die? The answer came to me around midnight. Sarah's biggest mistake was assuming I was helpless. She'd been so focused on making me appear incompetent that she'd forgotten I was still capable of thinking, planning, and acting. I called Patricia. I need you to help me with something, I said when she answered. Something that might be dangerous. What kind of dangerous? I need to go home. I need to search my house for evidence. But I need Sarah to think I'm still unconscious. Helen, you can't leave the hospital. You have broken ribs, a concussion. I can walk. I can think. I can function. And I might not get another chance to prove what Sarah did to me. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. What do you need me to do? I need you to help me sneak out, just for a few hours. I need to get into my house while Sarah and Ryan are at work. If I'm caught, I'll deal with the consequences. But if I don't try, Sarah gets away with attempted murder. The next morning, Patricia helped me dress in street clothes and wheelchair me to a side exit. Her car was waiting in the parking lot. I still think this is a bad idea, she said as we drove toward my house. It's the only idea I have left. My house looked different somehow. Smaller, less welcoming, like it had already forgotten that I'd lived there for 30 years. Sarah's car was gone. Ryan's truck was gone. The kids would be at school. I had maybe 3 hours before anyone came home. Patricia helped me to the front door. My key still worked, which surprised me. I'd expected Sarah to change the locks by now. Inside, the house felt like a museum of my former life. My furniture was still there, but it had been rearranged. My pictures were gone from the walls. My books were missing from the shelves. Where do you want to start? Patricia asked. Sarah's office. She's been keeping files on me. Documentation of my supposed memory problems. If there's evidence of premeditation, it'll be in there. Sarah's office was actually my old sewing room. She'd converted it into a workspace with a desk, filing cabinets, and a computer. The walls were covered with charts and calendars and lists. One of the charts made my blood run cold. It was titled Helen's Incidents, and it documented every supposed mistake I'd made over the past year. Dates, times, witnesses, consequences. It read like a case file being built by a prosecutor. Look at this, I said, pointing to an entry from 3 months ago. June 15th. Helen left stove on. Gas smell in kitchen. Had to air out house. Witness. Ryan. I remembered that day. I'd been making soup for Emma, who was sick with a cold. I'd turned the stove off and left the pot to cool. But an hour later, Sarah had called everyone into the kitchen, claiming she smelled gas and found the burner still on. She turned it back on, I said. She waited for me to leave the kitchen, then turned the burner back on and called Ryan to witness it. Patricia looked at more entries. July 3rd. Helen forgot to pick up Tyler from baseball practice, left him waiting for 2 hours. Witness, Coach Martinez. I was never supposed to pick up Tyler that day, I said. Sarah was supposed to get him, but she must have called and changed the pickup plan without telling me. August 12th. Helen drove to grocery store but forgot why she was there. Came home with wrong items. Witness, store clerk. The clerk was Sarah's friend. They planned that together. Every entry on the chart was a setup. Every witness was either Sarah herself or someone she'd manipulated. Every incident was designed to make me look incompetent and dangerous. Patricia, look at this. I pointed to the last entry on the chart. September 22nd. Helen insists her brakes are fine despite obvious signs of wear. Refuses to have car serviced. Dangerous driving behavior. September 22nd was yesterday, the day before my accident. Sarah had documented my supposed refusal to fix my brakes before she'd even sabotaged them. She planned this weeks in advance, I said. Maybe months. We searched through Sarah's filing cabinets. I found copies of the forged insurance documents, along with practice sheets where Sarah had traced my signature dozens of times. I found research she'd done on brake line locations and cutting techniques. I found a notebook full of ideas for making my death look accidental. Staged fall downstairs. Too obvious, one entry read. Medication overdose. Requires access to prescription drugs. Car accident. Most believable, happens to elderly drivers frequently. Car accident. She'd literally shopped for the best way to kill me. Patricia, we need to photograph everything, I said. Every document, every chart, every piece of evidence. We spent 2 hours documenting Sarah's preparation, the practice signatures, the incident reports, the research notes, the insurance paperwork, the timeline she'd created for my supposed mental decline. By the time we finished, we had enough evidence to prove premeditation. Sarah hadn't just tried to kill me in a moment of anger or desperation. She'd planned it carefully, methodically, over months. We need to get back to the hospital, Patricia said. Sarah will be checking on you soon. As we prepared to leave, I heard a car in the driveway. My heart stopped. It's Ryan's truck, Patricia whispered. We were trapped. If Ryan found me in the house, he'd know I was capable of more than Sarah had told him. He'd know I was investigating. He'd warn Sarah. The basement? I said. We can hide in the basement until he leaves. We made it downstairs just as Ryan's key turned in the front door. From the basement, we could hear him walking around upstairs, opening and closing doors. Mom? He called out. Are you here? My heart was pounding. If he came downstairs, we'd be caught. I know you're here, Ryan said. I can feel you. Feel me? That was an odd thing to say. Unless I brought you something, Ryan continued. Something that might help you remember. Remember what? I wasn't supposed to be able to remember anything. I was supposed to be unconscious in a hospital bed, unless Ryan knew more than he was letting on. Unless he'd been part of Sarah's plan all along. I brought Dad's wedding ring, Ryan said. The one you said you lost. I found it in Sarah's jewelry box. My husband's wedding ring. The one I'd searched for frantically after he died. The one I'd assumed was lost forever. Sarah took it, Ryan continued. She took a lot of things. Things that belonged to you. Things that belonged to Dad. I didn't know until today. My heart stopped. Ryan was talking to an empty house, but he was talking like he knew I was there. Like he knew I was listening. I found her files, Ryan said. All her research, all her planning. I know what she did to you, Mom. I know what she tried to do. He knew. Somehow, Ryan knew. I'm going to make this right, Ryan said. I'm going to make sure she pays for what she did. I heard him walking toward the basement door. Patricia grabbed my arm, but I pulled away and started up the stairs. Ryan? I called out. He was standing at the top of the stairs holding a manila envelope. His face was streaked with tears. I'm so sorry, Mom, he said. I'm so sorry I didn't see what was happening. I climbed the stairs and hugged my son. For the first time in months, he felt like my son again. Not Sarah's puppet. Not a stranger. My son. How did you know I was here? I asked. I didn't. But I hoped you would be. I hoped you were strong enough to come looking for the truth. How long have you known? I started suspecting something was wrong a few weeks ago. Sarah was too eager for you to sign papers, too happy when you had memory problems. But I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to believe my wife was capable of something like this. What? Changed? Ryan opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of photographs. I found these in her closet this morning. Pictures of you. Pictures of the house. Pictures of your car. She'd been watching you, documenting your routines, planning your death. I looked at the photographs. They were surveillance photos, taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. Pictures of me leaving the house, getting in my car, walking to the mailbox. Pictures that tracked my movements and habits. She was hunting me, I said. Yes. And I helped her. I didn't know I was helping her, but I was. Every time I agreed that you were getting forgetful, every time I supported her decisions about your care, every time I made you feel like you were losing your mind, I was helping her build her case. Ryan, you didn't know. I should have known. I should have protected you. I should have been a better son. We held each other and cried. For the first time in months, I felt like I had my family back. Part of it anyway. What do we do now? I asked. Now we call Detective Santos, Ryan said, and we make sure Sarah never hurts anyone again. Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted completely was planning to destroy you? What would you do if you were in my position? Detective. Santos arrived at the house within 20 minutes of Ryan's call. She brought 2 other officers and a crime scene photographer. Patricia and I sat in the living room while they processed Sarah's office, documenting every piece of evidence we'd found. This is extensive, Detective Santos said, looking through Sarah's files. She's been planning this for at least 6 months, maybe longer. What happens now? I asked. Now we build a case. We have evidence of premeditation, fraud, and attempted murder. But we need to be careful. Sarah doesn't know we've found this evidence. If we move too fast, she might destroy other evidence or flee. What do you suggest? We set a trap. We let Sarah think her plan worked. We let her believe you're going to die from your injuries. Then we watch what she does next. Ryan looked uncomfortable. You want me to lie to my wife? I want you to help us catch someone who tried to murder your mother, Detective Santos replied. Someone who's been stealing from her, manipulating her, and planning her death for months. What about the kids? Ryan asked. Emma and Tyler don't know anything about this. They think their mom is a hero for taking care of Grandma. My heart broke for my grandchildren. They loved Sarah. In their eyes, she was the perfect mother who made their lunches, helped with homework, and tucked them in at night. They had no idea that same woman had tried to kill their grandmother. The children will be protected, Detective Santos assured us. But right now, we need to focus on stopping Sarah before she hurts anyone else. Anyone else? I asked. Mrs. Carter, people who are capable of attempted murder don't usually stop at one victim. If Sarah is willing to kill you for insurance money, she might be willing to kill again if the opportunity arises. The thought made me sick. What if Sarah decided Ryan was more valuable to her dead than alive? What if she decided the children were becoming too much trouble? What do you need me to do? I asked. Go back to the hospital. Act like you're getting worse, not better. Let Sarah think you're dying. Meanwhile, we'll be monitoring her activities, watching for more evidence. How long will this take? Days, maybe weeks. But Mrs. Carter, this is the only way to make sure Sarah faces justice. If we arrest her now, she'll claim the evidence was planted. She'll say Ryan or you fabricated everything because you didn't like her. A good lawyer could create reasonable doubt. But if we wait, if we let her think she's succeeded, she might make mistakes. She might reveal information that proves her guilt beyond any doubt. I understood the logic, but I hated the idea of playing dead while Sarah celebrated my supposed demise. Still, if it meant ensuring she couldn't hurt anyone else, I was willing to do it. There's one more thing, Detective Santos said. We need to monitor Sarah's communications, phone calls, text messages, emails. If she's working with anyone else, we need to know. You think she had help? Ryan asked. I think someone this calculating doesn't work alone. She needed help forging signatures, accessing your mother's accounts, maybe even sabotaging the car. We need to find out who else is involved. The next few days were the hardest of my life. I returned to the hospital and pretended to be near death while Sarah visited every day, playing the role of the grieving daughter-in-law perfectly. She brought flowers. She held my hand. She whispered prayers and promises about taking care of the children. To anyone watching, she looked like a woman devastated by her mother-in-law's condition. But I could see the truth in her eyes. The satisfaction, the relief, the barely contained excitement of someone whose plan was finally working. The doctors say you might not make it through the night, she told me during one visit. I want you to know that I'll take care of everything. The funeral arrangements, the insurance, the legal stuff. You don't need to worry about anything. The funeral arrangements? She was already planning my funeral. I've been thinking about what you'd want, she continued. Something simple, I think. You never liked big, elaborate events. Maybe just family and close friends. Close friends. The friends she'd systematically isolated me from over the past year. I found some pictures of you and Dad that I thought we could use, she said, pulling out a photo album. Remember this one? From your anniversary dinner last year? She showed me a picture of my husband and me at our favorite restaurant. We looked happy. We looked like we belonged together. We looked like we had many more years ahead of us. He's waiting for you, Sarah said softly. It's okay to let go. It's okay to be with him again. Let go. She was literally encouraging me to die. The kids wanted to say goodbye, she continued. But I thought it might be too traumatic. They're so young. I don't want them to have bad memories of their last time with Grandma. Bad memories. Like the memory of their mother trying to murder their grandmother. After Sarah left, I lay in bed thinking about my grandchildren. Emma with her bright smile and endless questions. Tyler with his quiet determination and gentle heart. They deserved better than growing up with a mother who was capable of murder. Detective Santos visited that evening with an update. We've been monitoring Sarah's communications, she said. She's been in contact with someone we didn't expect. Who? Your insurance agent, a man named David Miller. They've been having very detailed conversations about your policy, your death certificate, and the claims process. That doesn't sound unusual. She's handling the insurance claim. The conversation started 3 months ago, before your accident. They've been planning the logistics of your death for months. My blood ran cold. The insurance agent was part of this? It appears so. Miller has been helping Sarah understand how to maximize the payout, how to avoid red flags that might trigger an investigation, how to make your death look accidental. How many people were involved in trying to kill me? We're still investigating, but Mrs. Carter, this is bigger than we initially thought. Sarah didn't just decide to kill you on impulse. She recruited help. She built a network of people who were willing to profit from your death. What about Ryan? Do you think he knew? Based on our investigation, I believe your son was manipulated, not complicit. Sarah was very careful to keep him in the dark about the specifics while using him to validate your supposed mental decline. That was some comfort, at least. My son hadn't tried to kill me. He'd been used, manipulated, and deceived. But he hadn't been part of the murder plot. What happens next? I asked. Tomorrow, Sarah is meeting with Miller to discuss the insurance claim. We'll be recording that conversation. If she says anything that proves premeditation, we'll have enough evidence to arrest her. What if she doesn't say anything incriminating? Then we wait. But Mrs. Carter, people who commit crimes like this can't help but talk about them. Sarah is proud of what she's done. She thinks she's cleverer than everyone else. Eventually, she'll say something that proves her guilt. The next morning, I received an unexpected visitor, Emma and Tyler, my grandchildren, accompanied by their other grandmother, Sarah's mother. "Grandma Helen!" Emma cried, running to my bedside. "Mommy said you were sleeping, but you're awake." Tyler hung back, looking scared. "Are you going to die?" he asked quietly. My heart broke. These children had no idea what their mother had done. They were worried about losing their grandmother, not knowing their mother was the reason they might lose me. "I'm going to try very hard not to," I said, which was the most honest answer I could give. Sarah's mother, Linda, looked uncomfortable. "I'm sorry to bother you, Helen. I know you're not feeling well. But the children have been asking about you constantly. Sarah said it would be okay to visit for just a few minutes." Sarah said it would be okay. I wondered if Sarah knew about this visit or if Linda had brought the children against her wishes. "I'm glad you came," I said. "I've missed you both so much." Emma climbed onto the bed beside me. "Mommy says you can't remember things anymore. She says your brain is broken." "My brain isn't broken, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups get confused about things, but that doesn't mean they're broken. Mommy says you might forget who we are." "I could never forget who you are. You're my Emma. You're brave and smart and kind. You love dancing and reading and chocolate chip cookies." Emma smiled. "You remember?" "I remember everything about you. I remember when you were born, when you took your first steps, when you lost your first tooth. I remember all of it." Tyler came closer. "Mommy says you're going to live with the angels soon." Live with the angels. Sarah had told my grandchildren I was going to die. "Tyler, I'm not planning to go anywhere anytime soon. I want to see you grow up. I want to see you play baseball and graduate from school and get married someday." "But Mommy says—" "Sometimes mommies make mistakes," I said gently. "Sometimes they think they know what's going to happen, but they don't really know." Linda looked at me strangely. "You seem very alert for someone who's supposed to be— Sarah said you were barely conscious." "I have good days and bad days," I lied. "Today is a good day." "Sarah's been so worried about you," Linda continued. "She's been handling everything. The insurance, the legal stuff, the arrangements. She's been amazing." Arrangements. Even Sarah's mother knew about the funeral arrangements. "She's been talking to lawyers about your estate," Linda said, "making sure everything is handled properly when the time comes." "What lawyers?" "I don't know the details, but she's been very thorough. She wants to make sure Ryan and the children are taken care of." Sarah had been consulting with lawyers about my estate before I was even dead. She was already dividing up my possessions, planning how to spend my money, preparing to move on with her life. After Linda and the children left, I called Detective Santos. "Sarah's been talking to lawyers," I said. "Her own mother mentioned it." "We know. We've identified 3 different attorneys she's consulted with in the past month. Estate planning, insurance law, and family law. She's been very busy preparing for your death." "What about the meeting with the insurance agent?" "It's happening this afternoon. We have surveillance set up. If Sarah says anything that proves premeditation, we'll have her." "And if she doesn't?" "Then we continue waiting. But Mrs. Carter, I want you to know that regardless of what happens today, we have enough evidence to arrest Sarah. The forged documents, the fake incident reports, the surveillance, photos. It's enough to prove attempted murder. Then why wait?" because we want to make sure she can't claim she was trying to help you. We want to make sure there's no possibility of her getting off on a technicality or a sympathetic jury believing she was just a concerned daughter-in-law. That evening, Detective Santos returned with news. "We got her," she said simply. "What did she say?" "She told Miller that she'd been planning your death for 8 months. She said she'd researched different methods and chosen a car accident because it would be the least suspicious. She said she'd been documenting your supposed memory problems to make your death seem inevitable." "She confessed?" "She bragged. She told Miller that she'd outsmarted everyone, that she'd manipulated you and Ryan and the entire family. She said she'd always known she was smarter than everyone else, and this proved it." "When will you arrest her?" "Tomorrow morning. We want to coordinate with the FBI, since this involves insurance fraud across state lines. We also want to arrest Miller at the same time." "What about Ryan and the children?" "Ryan will be fine. The children will need counseling, but they'll be okay. They'll be staying with Linda until Ryan can figure out custody arrangements." "What happens to Sarah?" "She'll be charged with attempted murder, insurance fraud, elder abuse, and conspiracy. If convicted, she's looking at 25 years to life." 25 years to life. Sarah had risked everything for insurance money she'd never get to spend. "Detective Santos, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you think Sarah ever loved Ryan? Do you think she ever cared about the children? Or was it all just an act?" Detective Santos was quiet for a long moment. "I think Sarah is a sociopath," she said finally. "I think she's capable of mimicking love and affection, but not feeling it. I think she saw your family as resources to be exploited, not people to be loved." "How could I not see it?" "Because you're a good person who assumes other people are good too. You trusted her because that's what normal people do. You didn't see her true nature because you don't have a true nature like hers. I feel like I failed my son. I feel like I failed my grandchildren. You didn't fail anyone. You were the victim of a very sophisticated, very calculated manipulation. Sarah spent years building her facade, earning trust, creating the appearance of normalcy. You couldn't have known what she was really like." "What do I do now?" "Now you heal. You recover from your injuries and rebuild your life. You spend time with your grandchildren and help them understand that what happened wasn't their fault. You don't let Sarah's evil destroy your capacity for love and trust. Will I ever feel safe again? Eventually. It'll take time, but you'll heal. And Mrs. Carter, you should know that you're incredibly brave. Not many people would have had the strength to investigate their own attempted murder. Not many people would have been willing to pretend to be dying to catch their would-be killer. I just wanted justice." "You got it. Sarah will spend the rest of her life in prison. She'll never hurt you or anyone else again." That night, I slept better than I had in months. For the first time since the accident, I felt truly safe. Sarah couldn't hurt me anymore. She couldn't manipulate Ryan or threaten the children. She couldn't steal my money or forge my signature or sabotage my car. She W6As finished. But as I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't help but wonder, how many other Sarahs were out there? How many other families were being destroyed by people who looked normal on the surface but were monsters underneath? How many other people were living with someone who was planning their death? The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my phone ringing. It was Ryan. "Mom, they arrested Sarah," he said. "She's been charged with trying to kill you. I can't believe it. I mean, I knew she'd been planning it, but seeing her in handcuffs, hearing the charges read, it's real now. How are you doing?" "I'm angry. I'm hurt. I'm confused. I'm relieved. I don't know what I'm feeling. But Mom, I'm also grateful. I'm grateful you survived. I'm grateful you were strong enough to fight back. I'm grateful you didn't let her win. What about the children? They don't understand yet. They think Mommy is sick and needs help. I'll explain it to them when they're older. when they can process it better. Are you okay? Financially, I mean. I'll figure it out. I might lose the house, but that's okay. It was never really mine anyway. You gave it to us, and Sarah used it against you. I'd rather start over than live with that memory. Ryan, I want you to have the house. I want you and the children to have a stable home. I can't accept that. Not after what happened. Then accept it for Emma and Tyler. They need stability right now. They need to know that their family is still intact, even if it's smaller now. Are you sure? I'm sure, but I have conditions. What conditions? I want to be part of their lives. I want to see them regularly, help with homework, take them to the park. I want to be their grandmother, not just someone they visit occasionally. Of course. Mom, I want that too. I want us to be a real family again. A real family. For the first time in months, that seemed possible. There's something else, Ryan said. The police found Sarah's journal. She wrote about her plans, her feelings, her motivations. If you want to read it, Detective Santos said she'd share it with you. Do you think I should? I think you should do whatever helps you heal. If reading it would give you closure, then read it. If it would hurt you more, then don't. What did it say? It said that she never loved any of us. Not me, not the kids, not you. She said we were all just tools to help her get what she wanted. She said she felt nothing when she watched your car crash. She said she was disappointed that you survived. The words hit me like a physical blow. Sarah had never loved my grandchildren. She'd never loved Ryan. She'd never felt anything for us except contempt and greed. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry I brought her into our lives. I'm sorry I let her hurt. You didn't know. None of us knew. I should have known. I should have protected you. You did protect me. When it mattered most, you chose to help me instead of her. You chose truth over loyalty to her. You chose your mother over your wife. It wasn't a choice. It was obvious. She tried to kill you. She tried to kill my mother. It should have been obvious. But Sarah was very good at making people doubt themselves. She was very good at making people question their own perceptions. I'll never forgive myself. You don't need to forgive yourself. You need to learn from this. You need to make sure it never happens again. How do I do that? You trust your instincts. You listen to warning signs. You don't let anyone isolate you from the people you love. And you remember that actions matter more than words. I love you, Mom. I love you too, son. After we hung up, I sat in my hospital bed thinking about the future. Sarah was gone, but the damage she'd done would take time to repair. Ryan would need to rebuild his confidence and learn to trust again. The children would need to process the loss of their mother and learn to form healthy relationships. I would need to overcome the trauma of being betrayed by someone I'd trusted completely. But for the first time in months, I had hope. Hope that my family could heal. Hope that we could move forward together. Hope that love could triumph over hate. Sarah had tried to destroy us, but she'd failed. We were still here. We were still family. And we were going to survive. If someone close to you suddenly started questioning your memory and abilities, would you recognize the warning signs before it was too late? The courtroom was packed the day Sarah's trial began. I sat in the front row, wearing the navy blue dress I'd worn to my husband's funeral 7 years earlier. It seemed fitting somehow. This was another kind of death. The death of the illusion that Sarah had ever been family. Ryan sat beside me, holding my hand. He'd lost 30 pounds since Sarah's arrest and looked older than his 35 years. The children were staying with Linda during the trial. They still didn't fully understand what was happening, only that Mommy was sick and couldn't come home. Sarah entered the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit, her hands shackled. She looked smaller than I remembered. Less powerful, less intimidating. For months, she'd been the puppet master controlling everyone's lives. Now she was just another defendant hoping to avoid prison. She glanced in my direction once. Our eyes met for perhaps 3 seconds. There was no remorse in her expression. No shame. No recognition of the pain she'd caused. Just cold calculation. Like she was trying to figure out how to use my presence to her advantage. The prosecutor, District Attorney Jennifer Walsh, was a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a reputation for winning difficult cases. She'd spent weeks preparing for this trial, reviewing evidence, interviewing witnesses, building an airtight case. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, "you're going to hear a story that sounds like fiction. A story about a daughter-in-law who systematically destroyed her mother-in-law's life, stole her money, isolated her from friends and family, and ultimately tried to kill her for insurance money." The jury listened intently as DA Walsh outlined the evidence. The forged documents, the fake incident reports, the surveillance photos, the recorded confession, the network of accomplices who'd helped plan my death. The defendant didn't just wake up one morning and decide to commit murder. Walsh continued. She planned it for months. She researched methods. She recruited help. She built a false narrative about her victim's mental decline to justify her actions. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't a moment of poor judgment. This was cold-blooded, premeditated murder. The only reason Helen Carter is alive today is because she was stronger than her would-be killer anticipated. Sarah's lawyer, Martin Hendricks, was a smooth-talking man in an expensive suit. He'd been hired by Sarah's parents, who still believed their daughter was innocent despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. "My client is not a monster," Hendricks said in his opening statement. "She's a devoted wife and mother who made some poor decisions while caring for an elderly relative with serious cognitive issues." Poor decisions. He was calling attempted murder a poor decision. Helen Carter was indeed suffering from memory problems, Hendricks continued. She was confused, forgetful, sometimes dangerous. My client was trying to help her, protect her, ensure she received proper care. Did my client make mistakes in how she handled the situation? Yes. Did she sometimes act without proper authorization? Yes. But did she intentionally try to harm Mrs. Carter? Absolutely not. I felt Ryan's hand tighten on mine. Hearing Sarah's lawyer paint me as a confused, dangerous old woman brought back all the months of gaslighting and manipulation. The prosecution would have you believe that my client is some kind of criminal mastermind, Hendricks said. But look at her. She's a 32-year-old mother of 2 who was overwhelmed by the responsibility of caring for her aging mother-in-law. The evidence you'll hear was taken out of context, misinterpreted, or fabricated by people who want to blame someone for what was ultimately a tragic accident. Fabricated. He was claiming the mountain of evidence against Sarah was fake. The first witness was Miguel, the truck driver who'd pulled me from the wreckage. He described what he'd seen that day. The woman in the red jacket waving goodbye. The car that couldn't stop. The 6 flips that should have killed me. "I've been driving trucks for 23 years, Miguel testified. "I've seen hundreds of accidents, but I've never seen someone wave goodbye to a car that was about to crash. It was the strangest thing I'd ever witnessed." Under cross-examination, Hendricks tried to discredit Miguel's testimony. "Isn't it possible that you misinterpreted what you saw? That Mrs. Melby was simply waving hello, not goodbye?" "No, sir," Miguel replied firmly. "I know the difference between hello and goodbye. That woman was saying goodbye. She was smiling like she was happy about something." The next witness was Patricia, the nurse who'd helped me investigate Sarah's crimes. She testified about the forged insurance documents, the fake auto shop appointment, The evidence we'd found in Sarah's office. Mrs. Carter was alert and oriented throughout her hospital stay, Patricia testified. She showed no signs of confusion or memory problems. She was able to recall details, make plans, and execute complex tasks. In your professional opinion, D.A. Walsh asked, was Mrs. Carter suffering from dementia or other cognitive issues? Not at all. She was sharper than many people half her age. Hendricks attacked Patricia's credibility during cross-examination. You're not a doctor, are you, Ms. Johnson? You're not qualified to diagnose cognitive conditions. I'm a registered nurse with 15 years of experience, Patricia replied. I've worked with hundreds of patients with dementia and Alzheimer's. I know the signs, and Mrs. Carter didn't exhibit any of them. But you helped Mrs. Carter break out of the hospital, didn't you? You helped her violate medical orders and leave without permission. I helped her search for evidence that someone had tried to kill her. That's not what I asked. Did you not help her leave the hospital against medical advice? I did. And you think that was appropriate professional behavior? I think it was the right thing to do. Detective Santos was the third witness. She walked the jury through the investigation, explaining how each piece of evidence had been discovered and verified. The defendant's planning was extensive, Santos testified. She researched brake line locations, practiced forging signatures, documented false incidents to support her claim that Mrs. Carter was mentally incompetent. She recruited accomplices, including an insurance agent who helped her understand how to maximize the payout while avoiding suspicion. This wasn't a spontaneous act. This was a sophisticated conspiracy to commit murder. Hendricks tried to portray the evidence as circumstantial. Detective, you never found the actual brake lines from Mrs. Carter's car, did you? The car was totaled in the accident. The brake lines were destroyed. So you have no physical evidence that they were actually cut? We have Mrs. Carter's testimony that her brakes failed completely. We have evidence that the defendant lied about taking the car to a mechanic. We have brake fluid in the driveway, and the defendant's own research on brake line sabotage. But you have no definitive proof that the brake lines were cut, correct? Correct. And Mrs. Carter could have simply experienced brake failure due to normal wear and tear, couldn't she? That's not what the evidence suggests. But it's possible, isn't it? Anything is possible, but the evidence strongly indicates deliberate sabotage. The insurance agent, David Miller, was the prosecution's star witness. He'd agreed to testify in exchange for a reduced sentence on his own charges. Sarah approached me about 8 months ago, Miller testified. She said she was concerned about her mother-in-law's life insurance policy. She wanted to understand the claims process. At first, I thought it was just normal estate planning, but over time, our conversations became more specific. She asked about how to make a death look accidental. She asked about red flags that might trigger an investigation. You know she was planning to kill Mrs. Carter? D.A. Walsh asked. Not at first, but as time went on, it became clear that she wasn't just planning for a natural death. She was planning to cause Mrs. Carter's death. And you helped her? Yes. I'm ashamed to admit it, but yes. She offered me 10% of the insurance payout if I helped her navigate the claims process. $50,000? Yes? And for $50,000 you were willing to help plan a murder? Miller looked down at his hands. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was in debt. My marriage was failing. I made terrible decisions. When did you realize Mrs. Carter was going to be murdered? The day before the accident. Sarah called me and said it was going to happen soon. She said she'd taken care of the car and everything would look accidental. What did you think she meant by taken care of the car? I thought she meant she'd sabotaged it somehow. I didn't want to know the details. But you knew she was planning. To kill Mrs. Carter? Yes. And you did nothing to stop it? No. I'm sorry. I should have called the police. I should have warned Mrs. Carter. I should have done something. Hendricks tried to discredit Miller's testimony. You're facing 20 years in prison, aren't you, Mr. Miller? Yes. And you've been offered a plea deal in exchange for your testimony? Yes. So you have a strong incentive to tell the prosecution what they want to hear, don't you? I have an incentive to tell the truth. Or you have an incentive to blame my client for your own crimes. I'm not blaming anyone. I'm telling you what happened. Isn't it possible that you misunderstood my client's intentions? That you assumed she was planning something sinister when she was actually just trying to help her mother-in-law? No. She was very clear about what she wanted to do. But you never recorded these conversations, did you? No. You have no proof of what my client allegedly said? Other than the recorded conversation where she confessed to planning the murder? No. That was the moment I saw Sarah's confidence crack. She leaned forward and whispered something urgently to her lawyer. He shook his head and whispered back. She looked panicked. The recorded conversation was played for the jury. Sarah's voice filled the courtroom, clear and unmistakable. I've been planning this for 8 months, she said on the recording. I researched different methods and chose a car accident because it would be the least suspicious. I documented her memory problems to make her death seem inevitable. I made sure everyone knew she was getting confused and forgetful. The break lines were easier to cut than I thought. I watched some YouTube videos to learn how to do it properly. The chai. Hardest part was acting sad when it happened. I had to pretend to be devastated when really I was relieved. She was becoming such a burden. The jury sat in stunned silence. Several jurors looked at Sarah with disgust. One woman was crying. I outsmarted everyone, Sarah continued on the recording. I manipulated Helen, Ryan, the whole family. I always knew I was smarter than them, and this proves it. The best part is that no one suspects anything. They all think I'm the perfect daughter-in-law who tried so hard to help. $500,000 tax-free. Plus the house, the savings account, everything else. I'll be set for life. Poor Ryan doesn't know what hit him. He actually feels guilty for not protecting his mother better. If only he knew his wife was the one who tried to kill her. When the recording ended, the courtroom was completely silent. Even Hendricks looked shaken. Ladies and gentlemen, DA Walsh said, those are the defendant's own words, her own confession. She planned this murder for months. She recruited accomplices. She executed her plan with cold precision. And she would have gotten away with it if Helen Carter hadn't been stronger than Sarah anticipated. The defense's case was weak. Hendricks called character witnesses who testified about Sarah's devotion to her children, her volunteer work at the school, her reputation as a caring neighbor. But how do you defend someone against their own recorded confession? How do you explain away months of documented planning? How do you justify attempting to murder your mother-in-law for insurance money? Sarah took the stand in her own defense. It was a desperate move, but Hendricks probably felt he had no choice. I never intended to hurt Helen, Sarah testified. I was trying to help her. She was becoming confused, forgetful, sometimes dangerous. The incident reports were real. The memory problems were real. I was documenting them to show doctors and social workers that she needed help. I never cut any brake lines. I never sabotaged her car. I don't know why she crashed. The insurance policy changes were Helen's idea. She asked me to help her update her beneficiaries because she was worried about her memory. Everything I did was to help her, not hurt her. It was a masterful performance. Sarah looked sincere, vulnerable, wrongly accused. If I hadn't lived through her manipulation, I might have believed her. But DA Walsh was ready for the cross-examination. Ms. Melby, you testified that you never cut brake lines. But we have evidence that you researched brake line locations and cutting techniques. How do you explain that? I was trying to understand what might have caused Helen's accident. After the accident? Yes. But this research was found on your computer with timestamps from weeks before the accident. How do you explain that? Sarah hesitated. I was worried about her car. She'd been complaining about brake problems. But you testified that she never complained about brake problems. You said her brakes were fine. I misspoke. You misspoke? Under oath? I was confused. You were confused? Just like you claim your mother-in-law was confused. Hendricks objected, but the damage was done. Sarah's credibility was destroyed. Ms. Melby, you testified that the insurance policy changes were Helen's idea, but we have evidence that you forged her signature. How do you explain that? I didn't forge anything. We have handwriting analysis that shows the signatures were forged. We have practice sheets with your handwriting. Are you saying this evidence is fake? I don't know how to explain it. You don't know how to explain it? Or you don't want to explain it? I didn't forge anything. Ms. Melby, let's talk about the recorded conversation with David Miller. You confessed to planning this murder. You bragged about outsmarting everyone. How do you explain that? I was angry. I was venting. I said things I didn't mean. You said you cut brake lines as venting? I was frustrated with Helen's condition. I said things that weren't true. So you lied to David Miller? I was expressing frustration. By confessing to attempted murder? I didn't mean it literally. Ms. Melby, you said, and I quote, "The brake lines were easier to cut than I thought. How is that not literal?" Sarah's face was flushed. She was trapped and she knew it. I was speaking hypothetically. Hypothetically? You said you watched YouTube videos to learn how to cut brake lines. Was that hypothetical too? I was just talking. Ms. Melby, you also said, I outsmarted everyone. I manipulated Helen, Ryan, the whole family. Was that hypothetical? I was angry. And when you said $500,000 tax-free, plus the house, the savings account, everything else, I'll be set for life. Was that hypothetical? I was fantasizing. About profiting from your mother-in-law's death? I didn't mean it. Ms. Melby, you said, poor Ryan doesn't know what hit him. He actually feels guilty for not protecting his mother better. If only he knew his wife was the one who tried to kill her. Was that a fantasy too? Sarah broke down crying. I loved Helen. I would never hurt her. I was trying to help her. By cutting her brake lines? I never cut any brake lines. By forging her signature on insurance documents? I never forged anything. By recruiting David Miller to help you collect insurance money? I never recruited anyone. Ms. Melby, are you saying that everyone else is lying? The truck driver, the nurse, the detective, the insurance agent, the handwriting expert, the computer forensics specialist, are they all lying? Sarah looked around the courtroom desperately. I don't know. Maybe they made mistakes. Maybe they misunderstood. Or maybe you're lying. I'm not lying. Ms. Melby, why would all these people lie about you? I don't know. Could it be because you actually did try to kill your mother-in-law? No, I would never hurt anyone. But you did hurt someone. You hurt Helen Carter. You terrorized her for months. You stole her money. You isolated her from her friends. You made her question her own sanity. And then you tried to kill her. Sarah was sobbing now. I loved her. I loved her like my own mother. Is that how you treat your own mother? By trying to kill her? Hendricks objected, but it was too late. Sarah had completely fallen apart on the stand. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood and read the verdict. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of attempted murder in the first degree. We find the defendant guilty of insurance fraud. We find the defendant guilty of elder abuse. We find the defendant guilty of conspiracy to commit murder. Sarah collapsed in her chair. Her parents, sitting in the back row, were crying. Ryan squeezed my hand. Judge Patricia Morrison looked at Sarah with contempt. "Ms. Melby, you have been convicted of some of the most heinous crimes I've seen in my 20 years on the bench. You systematically destroyed an innocent woman's life. You stole her money, isolated her from her family, and ultimately tried to kill her for your own financial gain. The only reason Helen Carter is alive today is because she was stronger and braver than you anticipated. You have shown no remorse for your actions. Even now, you refuse to take responsibility for what you've done. I hereby sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Life without parole." Sarah would never see her children grow up. She would never hold her grandchildren. She would never be free again. As the bailiff led Sarah away, she looked back at me one last time. There was no remorse in her eyes, no regret, just anger that her plan had failed. But I felt something I hadn't expected. I felt pity, not for what Sarah had done, but for what she'd lost. She'd destroyed her own life trying to destroy mine. She'd given up everything for money she'd never get to spend. In the end, her greed had cost her everything. Her freedom, her family, her future. She'd gambled it all on a plan that required my death, and she'd lost. As we left the courthouse, Ryan put his arm around me. "It's over, Mom. It's finally over." "Yes," I said. "It's over." But in many ways, it was just beginning. We had to rebuild our lives, rebuild our family, rebuild our trust. We had to help Emma and Tyler understand what had happened without destroying their ability to love and trust others. We had to move forward without letting Sarah's evil define us. It wouldn't be easy, but we would do it together. What's the most shocking thing about this trial that you never saw coming? Tell me in the comments what surprised you most. The story didn't end with Sarah's conviction. 3 months later, I was sitting in my new home, a cozy cottage by the lake that I'd bought with the money from selling the house I'd given to Ryan and Sarah. The view was peaceful, the neighbors were kind, and for the first time in years, I felt truly free. Ryan and the children visited every weekend. We had barbecues in the backyard, went fishing on the lake, and slowly began to heal the wounds Sarah had inflicted on our family. Emma and Tyler were in therapy, learning to process the loss of their mother and the trauma of discovering her crimes. They were resilient, as children often are, but they needed time and support to rebuild their sense of security. Ryan was dating again. Nothing serious, just casual dinners and movies with a woman named Jennifer who worked at the library. She was kind and patient, and she understood that Ryan needed time to learn to trust again. I'd started volunteering at the Women's Legal Aid Clinic, helping other victims of domestic abuse and elder abuse. My experience with Sarah had taught me to recognize the signs of manipulation and gaslighting, and I was determined to help others avoid what I'd gone through. The insurance company had investigated Sarah's claim and denied it completely. They'd also flagged David Miller's agency for fraudulent practices, and several other suspicious claims were being investigated. Sarah's parents had tried to appeal her conviction, but the evidence was overwhelming. She would spend the rest of her life in prison, and there was nothing they could do to change that. I'd received letters from other families who'd been through similar experiences. People whose relatives had been abused, manipulated, or killed by spouses, children, or caretakers. My story had resonated with them, and they'd found comfort in knowing they weren't alone. One letter particularly touched me. It was from a woman named Margaret, whose daughter-in-law had been stealing from her for years. She'd been afraid to speak up because she didn't want to cause problems for her son, but my story had given her courage to report the theft. "If you could survive attempted murder," she'd written, "I can survive financial abuse. Thank you for showing me that it's never too late to fight back." That's what I wanted people to understand. That abuse doesn't discriminate by age. That family members can be predators. that it's never too late to recognize manipulation and fight back. But I also wanted people to understand that recovery is possible, that love can triumph over hate, that families can heal even after the worst betrayals. My story had a happy ending because I refused to be a victim. I refused to let Sarah's evil destroy my family. I fought back, and I won. Not everyone's story will have a happy ending. Some people don't survive the attacks against them. Some families are destroyed beyond repair. Some wounds never fully heal. But for those who do survive, there's hope. There's the possibility of rebuilding, of learning to trust again, of finding peace and happiness despite the trauma. That's what I wanted to share with the world. Not just the horror of what Sarah had done, but the hope of what came after. As I sat on my porch, watching the sunset over the lake, I thought about all the people who'd helped me along the way. Miguel, who'd saved my life. Patricia, who'd believed in me when no one else would. Detective Santos, who'd fought for justice. D.A. Walsh, who'd prosecuted Sarah with passion and skill. They'd all played a part in my survival and Sarah's conviction. They'd all chosen to help rather than look the other way. That's what gave me hope for the future. Not everyone is a Sarah. Most people are good, decent, caring individuals who want to help others. Yes, there are monsters in the world, people who will smile at you while planning your destruction, people who will steal from you, manipulate you, and even try to kill you. But there are also heroes, people who will risk their own safety to save a stranger, people who will fight for justice even when it's difficult, people who will stand up to evil even when it's dangerous. I'd been fortunate to encounter more heroes than monsters. That's what had saved me. And that's what I wanted people to remember. That for every Sarah in the world, there are dozens of Miguels, Patricias, and Detective Santos. People who will help you if you're brave enough to ask. My story was a cautionary tale, but it was also a story of hope. A story of survival. A story of the triumph of good over evil. And that's how I wanted it to be remembered. If you discovered someone close to you was planning your death, would you have the courage to fight back, or would fear paralyze you? 1 year after Sarah's conviction, I received a phone call that would change everything once again. It was Detective Santos, and her voice was tense. "Mrs. Carter, I need to tell you something. Sarah has been writing letters from prison." Letters to people on the outside. My blood ran cold. What kind of letters? She's been reaching out to other inmates' families, other people who might be sympathetic to her situation. She's trying to build a network of supporters who believe she was wrongly convicted. But the evidence was overwhelming. She confessed. On tape. I know. But Sarah is still manipulating people even from prison. She's claiming the confession was coerced, that the evidence was planted, that you and Ryan conspired to frame her. Who would believe that? You'd be surprised. There are people who want to believe that the justice system is corrupt, that innocent people are railroaded. Sarah is very good at finding these people and convincing them she's a victim. What does this mean for me and my family? It means you need to be careful. Some of these people are more than just sympathetic. They're angry. They think you destroyed an innocent woman's life. Are you saying I'm in danger? I'm saying you should be aware of your surroundings. Vary your routine. Let me know if you notice anything unusual. The fear came flooding back. For months, I'd felt safe, secure, free to live my life without looking over my shoulder. Now Sarah was reaching out from prison, trying to manipulate new victims into doing her bidding. There's something else, Detective Santos continued. Sarah has been granted an appeal. Her new lawyer is claiming ineffective counsel and prosecutorial misconduct. What does that mean? It means she might get a new trial. The appeals court will review the evidence and determine if her conviction was proper. Could she be released? It's unlikely, but it's possible. Appeals courts sometimes overturn convictions on technicalities, even when the defendant is clearly guilty. How long will this take? Months, maybe years. The appeals process is slow. I sat down heavily. After everything we'd been through, Sarah was still trying to destroy our lives. Even from prison, she was still manipulating people, still causing pain, still refusing to take responsibility for her crimes. Mrs. Carter, I want you to know that the district attorney's office is prepared to fight this appeal. We believe the conviction was proper and the sentence was appropriate. What can I do? Live your life. Don't let Sarah's actions control you. She wants you to be afraid. She wants you to feel like you're still under her power. Don't give her that satisfaction. That's easier said than done. I know. But you've already proven that you're stronger than she is. You survived her attempt to kill you. You exposed her crimes. You helped put her in prison. You can survive this too. After Detective Santos hung up, I sat in my living room staring at the lake. The peaceful view that had brought me so much comfort suddenly felt vulnerable. What if Sarah's supporters were watching me? What if they were planning to hurt me or my family? I called Ryan and told him about the conversation. He was quiet for a long moment. Mom, maybe you should consider moving again. Somewhere, Sarah's. People can't find you. I'm not running anymore. I ran from her manipulation for months. I'm not going to run from her prison supporters. But if you're in danger, then I'll deal with it. But I'm not letting Sarah control my life anymore, even from prison. What about the kids? What if someone tries to hurt them? Then we'll protect them. But we're not going to live in fear. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Sarah's letters, her appeals, her continued attempts to manipulate people. Even behind bars, she was still trying to destroy lives. But I also thought about all the people who'd helped me. Miguel, Patricia, Detective Santos, D.A. Walsh, the jury, members who'd seen through Sarah's lies. For every person Sarah convinced to support her, there were dozens more who recognized her for what she was. The next morning, I made a decision. I was going to write a book about my experience. Not just the crime and the trial, but the psychological, manipulation, the warning signs, the recovery process. I wanted to help other people recognize and escape from situations like mine. I started writing immediately. Every morning, I'd sit at my kitchen table with my laptop and remember everything that had happened. The gaslighting, the isolation, the financial abuse, the attempted murder, the investigation, the trial, the recovery. It was painful to relive those memories, but it was also empowering. With each chapter I wrote, I felt more removed from the victim I'd been and more connected to the survivor I'd become. The book took me 6 months to write. I called it Break Lines, A Daughter-in-Law's Betrayal and a Mother's Survival. It was published by a small press that specialized in true crime and memoir. I didn't expect it to be successful. I just wanted to tell my story, to help other people, avoid what I'd gone through. But the book struck a chord with readers. It became a bestseller, and I started receiving letters from people all over the country who'd experienced similar situations. One letter was from a woman whose son-in-law had been stealing from her for years. Another was from a man whose daughter had been manipulating him into signing over his property. A third was from a woman whose caregiver had been slowly poisoning her. The patterns were always the same: isolation, gaslighting, financial abuse, escalation to physical danger, and in many cases the victims had been too ashamed or confused to ask for help. My book seemed to give them permission to speak up, to fight back, to seek justice. That meant everything to me. I started doing speaking engagements at libraries, community centers, and law enforcement conferences. I talked about the warning signs of elder abuse, the importance of trusting your instincts, and the resources available to victims. The response was overwhelming. People would come up to me after my presentations with tears in their eyes, thanking me for giving them the courage to confront their own situations. One woman told me her daughter had been forging her signature on checks for months. She'd been afraid to report it because she didn't want to get her daughter in trouble. But after hearing my story, she'd contacted the police. Her daughter was arrested and sentenced to probation and restitution. Another woman told me her son-in-law had been pressuring her to change her will, making her feel guilty for not leaving everything to him. She'd been starting to doubt herself, wondering if she was being selfish. But my story helped her recognize the manipulation. She'd changed lawyers and updated her will to protect her assets. These stories gave me hope. They showed me that my experience, as traumatic as it had been, was serving a purpose. It was helping other people avoid becoming victims. But Sarah's appeal was still pending, and her supporters were still writing letters, still trying to build a case for her innocence. I received some of these letters myself, angry messages accusing me of lying, of destroying an innocent woman's life. The letters were disturbing, but they also revealed something important. Sarah's supporters were using the same manipulation, techniques she'd used on me. They were trying to make me feel guilty, confused, and responsible for her situation. But I wasn't the same person who'd been vulnerable to that manipulation. I'd learned to recognize it, to resist it, to turn it back on the manipulators. I started including examples of these letters in my presentations, showing audiences how manipulation worked, how it felt, how to resist it. The letters became teaching, tools, helping people understand the tactics used by abusers and their enablers. 18 months after Sarah's conviction, her appeal was denied. The appeals court ruled that her trial had been fair, her conviction proper, and her sentence appropriate. She would remain in prison for the rest of her life. I felt relief, but also something else. I felt closure. The legal system had worked. Justice had been served. Sarah would never hurt anyone again. But more importantly, I'd found my purpose. I'd turned my trauma into a mission to help others. I'd become an advocate for abuse victims, a teacher of warning signs, a living example that survival and recovery were possible. That's what I want to leave you with. Not just the horror of what Sarah did to me, but the hope of what came after, the people who helped me, the justice that was served, the new life I built, the other victims I was able to help. Evil exists in this world. There are people who will smile at you while planning your destruction. There are Sarahs everywhere, looking for vulnerable targets, perfecting their manipulation techniques, building their networks of enablers. But good also exists. There are people who will risk their own safety to save a stranger. There are people who will fight for justice even when it's difficult. There are people who will stand up to evil, even when it's dangerous. The question is, which side will you be on? Will you be like Sarah, using people for your own gain, manipulating and destroying lives for money or power? Or will you be like Miguel, Patricia, Detective Santos, and the countless others who chose to help rather than hurt? Will you recognize the warning signs when someone tries to manipulate you or your loved ones? Will you trust your instincts when something feels wrong? Will you speak up when you see abuse happening? Will you fight back when someone tries to destroy your life? The choice is yours. But remember this: you're stronger than you think. You're braver than you know. You're more resilient than you imagine. I was a 63-year-old woman who'd been isolated, manipulated, and nearly murdered. I could have given up. I could have accepted defeat. I could have let Sarah win. Instead, I fought back. I investigated. I gathered evidence. I helped put a would-be killer in prison. I rebuilt my life. I found my purpose. I helped others do the same. If I can do it, you can too. Don't let the Sarahs of the world destroy you. Don't let them steal your money, your dignity, your life. Don't let them make you question your own reality. Trust yourself. Trust your instincts. Trust that you deserve better than abuse, manipulation, and betrayal. And if you're currently in a situation like mine, please know that help is available. There are people who will believe you. There are resources that can protect you. There are ways to escape, to fight back, to survive. You are not alone. You are not helpless. You are not destined to be a victim. You have the power to change your story. You have the strength to fight back. You have the courage to survive. My car flipped 6 times that October day, but I landed on my feet, and so can you. If this story touched your heart, opened your eyes, or gave you hope, please don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like this story if it helped you understand the warning signs of manipulation. Subscribe to hear more stories of survival and hope. Comment below and tell me, what's one warning sign you'll never ignore? Again? Your story might help save someone else's life. Remember, you're stronger than you think, braver than you know, and more loved than you realize. Never let anyone convince you otherwise. The end.